Well, welcome everybody. We're at the Legacy panel, so this is one of my favorite parts of our conference when we get to hear from real producers who are making these practices work. So we have a good lineup of folks here. First, I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Austin Carlson, work for the Soil Health Coalition here. I also farm in southeast South Dakota, kind of by the Sioux Falls area. So yeah, our first panelist here on your right would be Dave Ollila, and he's up by the Newell area. He also works for the coalition, if you're not aware. Scot Eisenbraun, he is over by Wall. And then Alex Frasier, he's over by Falkton, South Dakota. So maybe we'll just kick it off. Each of you want to talk a little bit about the history of your operation, kind of where you've been, what you're doing currently, and go from there. And at any time, if any of you have questions, this is a very conversational time just to ask all the questions that you might have rattling around in your head listening to all these speakers the last couple days. See what these guys are doing, get their opinions. So yeah, Dave, why don't you kick it off? What are you doing on your operation, and what's the history of what you've been doing?
Well, yeah, thanks, Austin, and good morning, everyone. If you've heard me speak before, the way I've got to where I'm at is I've done everything wrong first. So then I've learned that that's not the right way to do it. And it's, you think about some of those things about where that could be. So where I'm located is I'm east in Newell on the edge of the irrigation project. So if you think of the heavy gumbo soils up there, and they've been tilled for, that was established in 1910, so we're over 100 years of bad behavior occurring on a lot of that, and they've tried everything from sugar beets to cucumbers to anything to make it work. But truly what it comes down to in that country is the perennials will prevail just because of the environment and the profitability in that and serving the local ranchers. So the ranch I'm on is I will be the fourth generation. My great grandparents settled there, coming out of the gold mine homestake, and a lot of the Finlanders settled in Butte and Harding County. Anyway, and not a big place, as with a lot of places on that irrigation project. Dairying was another one of those things that provided that cash flow. My folks' place where they live, that place was homesteaded in 1883. So I would be the fifth generation, and my son and I are just starting to take over that because my dad's 86. Be 87 here this week, so he's passing that on, and so he's done his own thing. He's been able to stay there, but obviously we're applying those things of soil health because it's the path of least resistance, and in our country, in our environmental conditions, that's the only way I can understand being sustainable in agriculture. And it's that other thing that you guys, we talk about beyond production practices, it's family practices. How do you operate these operations and keep your family intact? I was a school teacher in addition to running this little farm. I was a school teacher in Newell, my hometown, for 20 some years. And I can tell you up in that project, it's people come and go out of that thing all the time, and they've got the next best idea, but it's not sustainable because they're just too influenced by what we would consider traditional agricultural practices. They're going to fail because they've got too much into soils that are unwilling to give enough back out. And you'll have a boom year, 1 year, just like we do. But that's not enough to carry you those other 5 to 10 years that it isn't working. So my epiphany was a lot of good people as I was in teaching. There's a lot of good mentors, and then when I got into extension, I learned as much from ranchers in this circle of people as I did from just formal education. See, you look at your neighbors that are doing these things, and why are they still there, and what are they doing that's allowing them to be there and have happy families and enjoy what they're doing. I mean, what is life about? And when you're a young buck, you're gonna develop a ranching empire with all your efforts and your hard work, but you're going to get beat back quite a few times if you don't understand that path of least resistance, that your agricultural practices need to fit your environment and what you can do without a lot of management. And I think to pass on to my sons as they're coming into it, the first thing they have to do is they've got to find a bride that's willing to go down this journey with them, because we know what that can be like too. That mistress of the ranch gets to be pretty competitive with their attention. So you've got to do that, and they've got to be on the journey with you. Otherwise, it will fail, because there's just not enough of the other good things that we can say in cash or whatever to treat ourselves. You really got to love what you're doing. Anyway, I'm fortunate after the second try to find one of those brides to do that, and we're there, and she's all in, and of course she's home doing the things with our youngest while I'm out running around having all this fun. And so it works. It is amazing, and you've probably heard me say this in other talks. As you get started down that path, and I call them indirect consequences, I didn't think that going back and mimicking nature would bring all these other things that I'm observing now. I didn't set out to care about native bird species, but because I'm doing these other things, oh, by the way, there they are. And when you walk through a pasture and you're getting all these damn spider webs on your pants, where did that come from? Because that wasn't an experience I had as a kid. And so my children are seeing that and understanding it, and they can certainly see the change in me as far as stress levels when you start going down those paths. So I guess that's some of where my philosophy is. I'll stop there and we'll just work on questions.
That's perfect, Dave. Yeah, Scott, if you want to tell us a little bit about your operation and where you've been?
Yeah, I'm Scot Eisenbraun, and I don't like following a teacher because he talks better than me, because I'm not a public speaker. But I'll try to get through this. I started farming with my grandpa in the late '80s, and he was doing the strip till, or the half fallow, half crop, and then I took over his farm and then a neighbor's and a few different things, and finally I said, early '90s I tried the no-till, and since then we've been no-tilling. The first 5 years was a little tough, but after you get going, it's really good. And like Dave said here, it's a good way of life, and we've noticed I farm with two sons farm with me, and one, my dad and my youngest son we formed a cattle company, which is on my cap. We just formed it about a week ago, actually. I took him in, and I've been doing some LLCs to try to get my kids involved, and they're a percent now. They're the young generation. I mean, they're the ones that are out there doing the work, so they need to have skin in the game, is my feelings always. And so they got plenty of it right now. But anyway, we found through no-till and cover crops and different things, we have cut our fertilizer use in at least half, if not more, and partial due to fertilizer placement. And one of the big things we've done on our operation is, about 10 years ago, I had a partner that got cancer, and I knew he wasn't going to have time to check fields, so we hired an agronomist. And he goes around and checks our fields once a week, and it has saved us so much money and use of insecticides too. We probably use a third of the insecticides we used to use 10 years ago. And I think I raise confection sunflowers, and if you know anything about confection sunflowers, you cannot have bug damage in them or they don't take them. Well, the EPA has taken everything that works off the label. Since in the last 2 years, it's in my contract, I'm supposed to spray it twice with insecticides. We haven't sprayed it at all. Somehow nature has taken over, and out on my no-till stuff where we rotate, that we don't hardly spray. Sometimes we do borders, but that's one of the biggest benefits I see. Plus, our yields have increased so much due to no-till and conserving your water, and you go dig up your ground and there's a lot of live stuff in there. And I guess we've used a lot of airplane. When it's too muddy, we use an airplane to fly on our cover crops and into other crop, if there's other crops standing. But in western South Dakota, you got to kind of pick your battles when you're going to try a cover crop after you raise wheat or something on that ground. It's got to be the right fall to get a cover crop going, or you're wasting your time. At some falls it's too dry, So, other than that, I guess I got 7 grandkids, 1 more on the way, which will be the 7th generation if they stay on the farm, and hopefully they will. And I guess I don't know what else I'm drawing a blank now.
No, that's perfect. Thanks for that information. Alex, why don't you tell us about your operation?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Frasier. I farm with my dad around Falkton, South Dakota. We've been no-till for about 15 years now, and I came back from school, and Dad let me have input right away with fertilizer recommendations, chemical recommendations, helping pick seed, this sort of stuff. So I've had a lot of involvement early on. I was 18 years old and writing fertilizer recommendations for him when we were really never using much fertilizer in the past. And what we saw is you're doing the conventional stuff. You're going off of SDSU recommendations, 1.1 pounds of fertilizer, to raise a bushel of corn. We tissue sample and soil sample every year, multiple times tissue sample, and see that we're over fertilizing. And so the last 10 years, we've basically reduced our nitrogen by about 45%. We're down to 0.7 pounds of nitrogen now to raise a bushel of corn. We've decreased our phosphorus a ton as well. We're about 75% down on our phosphorus in terms of what's applied. We're down to about 200 pounds an acre to raise. Our yield goal is 170 bushel for corn, and we're down to about 200 pounds an acre of applied fertilizer to raise that crop, which is, overall we're down about 40% across everything. But the real unique thing that we do is we polycrop our soybeans, or we companion crop. What that is we plant our soybeans with an air seeder, about 150, 160,000 seeds an acre on 15-inch rows, and then in between those 15-inch rows we use rye, oats, and flax as a way to kind of qualify for the CSP program that we were involved in. It counts for the cover crop, and we plant it, just as early as you can in the spring to use that as our residual control. Our the rye kind of controls your small seeded broadleaf annuals. Oats helps suppress some soybean disease, and then flax is huge for mycorrhizal fungi association. Oats has some activity there as well, but kind of the goal that we were looking for is, I should step back a little bit. Right when I came back from school, we lost 12 quarters of ground. I was planning to just come back and farm, and kind of turned out to be a blessing because it made us innovate, change the way we do things, be way more efficient, way more, by the field approach versus just kind of a whole farm. Here's our corn fertility program. Here's what we do on our beans. We look at everything more acre by acre now. And it really forced us to adapt and change. We were farming just a little over 2,000 acres. We're now at 900 acres. So there's not necessarily the room for me to be there full time. So I've got a job as an agronomist as well. So I see both sides of the industry. I understand the chemical fertilizer, that side of things, which is a perfect blend with my dad and I. He's more of a engineer, mechanic, that sort of mentality where I can come in and kind of fill in the agronomy side. But we just noticed that we're over applying fertilizer and really seeing no benefits from it. You know, we're raising good crops, okay crops, but it was just kind of what everyone else was doing as well. So for us to have an advantage, smaller acres, we can be more specific, be more detailed, and more managed. So we just started slowly taking fertilizer away, and it's been about a 10-year process now to get to where we're at in terms of fertilizer applied. In the corn and wheat, that we've seen big benefits there. You know, we're raising 60, 70 bushel above our APH on corn. Wheat, we're 10, 20, 30 bushel, depending on the year. I'd say on average about 18 bushel above our APH on wheat. And on soybeans, since we've started polycropping, we've done that 4 years now. Every year we've set a new farm yield record. So we always had trouble breaking that 41 bushel farm average. So the first year we did it was 46, then it was 48, then it was 54, and last year we averaged 70 bushel beans on our farm. And no fertilizer applied to the beans. And then a lot of it, we've been able to reduce chemical as well. All of our corn in the last 8 years has been a one-pass system. I don't mind a little bit of weeds. You know, once your corn's a 1.5 feet tall, who cares? They're not going to outcompete you for nutrients or moisture. And on the bean side of things, with that polycrop in there, we're getting a lot of early season growth from these grasses, and that suppresses our broadleaf. You know, kochia was our biggest concern for a long time, and now that we have used the rye, we've completely eradicated kochia on our farm. So that's saving us a lot of dollars. You know, we're not using a spring pre. We're not using. Go ahead. Yep. Yeah, it's annual ryegrass. We've used like a spring rye as well too in the past. It just kind of depends what's cheaper. You know, going into the season, what we can find to blend. But you know, it's been a big benefit for us. We're spraying our beans less, we're harvesting more bushels, and we're spending less to grow that bushel. And it's all, to me, I think, you know, I've been lucky that my dad's let me have a lot of input coming right from school. I know a lot of people, you know, that I went to school with don't get that same opportunity. So I've been very blessed that way. And it was just kind of, I don't know if it was a hope and a prayer, kind of came up with this polycropping idea to conform with the CSP. And Dad said, let's try it. You know, in the first year we did all but 20 acres of our beans, and there was no difference in terms of yield. But what we've seen is stronger, bigger roots systems, way more nodulation. I'd say it's 3 to 1 versus where it's our check. And after that first year, we never did a check again. We've just kind of ran every acre of beans that way. So it's been very beneficial for us. You know, like I said, it's not really about how much we can farm. It's about how good we can manage the ground we farm right now. And yeah, we'd love to add a couple quarters, but we're very, very profitable in a time where it's harder to be always, you know, so it's the less we spend and the more we can raise, it's kind of the goal. And I think 5-10 years from now, we can be in a situation where we're hardly using any fertilizer because we've got our ground working so well. The one big thing that I see when I soil sample, I use a Haney test pretty much every year. And where we polycrop, we're seeing 30% more water extractable organic carbon in the ground versus a monocrop. And right there, that just kind of proves the whole system to me. And like I said, I work as an agronomist. I try to get people to buy into this program and try it. No luck yet, but I think there's a lot of validity to it. It's a whole different mindset. So I'm getting waved off here. So I guess if anyone's got questions, just.
Yeah, if there's questions, feel free. Otherwise, I've got pre-questions here.
Alex,
Yes.
On your polycropping, are you harvesting any of the small grain stuff?
No, we use an air seeder to plant it. Like I said, it's end of April, 1st of May, and then we let it grow until it joints. Or if we can get into the boot stage, the better. The more you can let that cover crop grow, get those grasses, you get more carbon in that stem, so it'll stay there a little bit longer.
You don't have a problem with FSA?
No, so I actually had to fight with the state to get this approved. And then after that was approved by the state, then it was the insurance company that gave me a lot of headaches because they thought we were trying to double crop, which if you spray it out, it's not a double crop. So it just is working with the government. Yes.
Do you think it would work to drop that seed with the soybeans in the same row?
I don't. I think the grass would outcompete the soybeans, choke them out to a certain degree. Having them separated by row, I think, has worked really well for us. I'm not saying it's the end-all, be-all, but I don't think putting it in the same row would be the right idea. And then if anybody that's got an air seeder, it's pretty easy to plumb up how you want it to, what tank feeds what towers. And we just have one gang that puts the soybeans down and one gang that puts the cover crop down.
Alex, I want to commend you for your being an agronomist and thinking soil health, as we need more agronomists out there talking about soil health and doing these practices. And you're putting your money where your mouth is. You're doing it at home and making it work. So that's awesome. You kind of answered my question. Is any of your clients, starting to do these practices? And they're not, but they will.
We'll see.
Just keep it up. And I think the other question I had was, do you have any livestock? Do you have an opportunity to graze?
No cattle, no pigs, nothing like that. We used to have sheep when I was younger, but we never really, I don't know, I was 10 or 12 when we sold out a sheep, but that is something we're looking at incorporating, even if it's just a few head to kind of serve ourselves for meat and that sort of thing throughout the year. But it's not, we've had neighbors graze, but nothing, no mob grazing, nothing like that, just kind of been turn them out into corn stalks or that sort of thing. So not a lot of livestock integration. And I think that's kind of the final thing that we need to add. But without cattle, we don't really have the infrastructure to handle them, a large amount. It becomes challenging for us.
I had a question on your termination of that
Yep.
cover. You do terminate prior to harvest?
Yeah, so it's typically gets 6 to 8 weeks of growth, but really what I'm looking for is the joint. I want to see that those grasses joint. If I can get that, then I know I'm getting that 8 to 1, 10 to 1 carbon to nitrogen ratio, so I'm getting enough out of that. If it doesn't joint, you're getting 3 or 4. It's not nearly as beneficial.
So it's a Roundup ready bean crop.
Oh yeah, we use Enlist beans. We've done it with Extend or Extend Flex in the past as well, but we're using Enlist now.
What crop follows with your soybeans?
So when you plant your beans, are you following corn or wheat stubble?
Both.
Both. Okay.
It kind of depends.
Do you plant a cover crop in your wheat stubble?
If the weather allows, yeah. We typically use something that's kind of like a brassica family, peas, that sort of thing, to kind of help get some more nitrogen into that system.
So that fall terminates?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And then, so like, I guess I should say, we start in the fall. We use Valor in the fall to hold our weed pressure back until we can get into the field. And then we plant our beans before our corn always. And we're planting as long a day bean as we can get that we like. And then just pushing to get that cover in the ground, because it'll outcompete the kochas and the, your lamb's quarters, that sort of stuff. It'll help suppress it.
Another question maybe for everyone. If you've looked at or thought of, or maybe you're using any biologicals in your system beyond, just the soil health principles.
Well, again, indirectly, when those micronutrients and some of those things came out, it was quick roots, and there was kind of back and forth on whether people thought those were the thing to do. But what's interesting is, and I've learned this from Dennis and Doug and even Glenn's with his pivots, with sprinklers, you can replicate whatever environment you want. And so for us up there, alfalfa's the thing, but alfalfa's a legume and earthworms follow legumes. And I didn't go plant earthworms, but you start managing that. And then somebody says, well, you've got good soil health if you got 25 earthworms. I can tell you as a kid, when we went to dig worms to go fishing, you did not go to the field. You went to the tree row or wherever there was some residue and found them there, right? I can go out there, and so I take my 13-year-old, and he thinks I'm crazy, and we're digging this square foot by 7-inch deal, which is about a 5-gallon bucket full of soil, and then we count the worms back out, 34. And I didn't put them there. So nature will recover itself. It's unbelievable, those things. That's what I talk about. There's so much of this stuff that's happening by accident that I'm not purposely doing, but you just stop messing. That's kind of what it is, and let nature reconstruct itself. Observe, and soil tests do that. And so under those sprinkler deals, we're moving. We went from 4% organic matter to 7, taking 5 ton of alfalfa off every year, and I'm on the 6th year, and it's not Roundup ready alfalfa. So I'm waiting for it to tip. When it's not tipping, well, I'll just keep going there. And asking soil scientists, well, then they talk about energy flow. So we're bringing sunlight in and we're capturing carbon in the soil, and we're capturing more than we're using. I claim nothing, but other than just think about what nature can do, and ta-da, there it is.
My son took over a farm, or bought a farm that was paid for 30 some years. And what we did is we've been hauling corn to Fall River feedlot, and we bring the compost back and spread it on there. And it's amazing how much in 3, I guess this next year will be 4 years, you know, how many, like you say, the earthworms are all over, and it's, you know, getting back your organic matter after they've taken it off for 30 years. And this is dry land, so I don't have nothing compared to that kind of organic matter, but I mean, we go from, a lot of ours is from 2.5 to my best on dry land's like 4.5% organic matter, which is pretty good for dry land in our area. But we're slowly increasing it, and I think it speeds up the all, like you say, the earthworms and all that by adding that compost. We've been doing that for about 10 years now. Not on every acre, but as many as we can. It costs quite a bit to haul it clear from Fall River, but our truck's busy both ways that way. So,
Your question on biologicals, I believe you're never going to replicate nature with a bug in a jug, but I've tried a bunch of them. One we're working on, kind of a big problem for us right now, is residue management. We're growing better crops and we don't till. So we've got a lot of trash, and then we're planting our beans with an air seeder, so you don't get a lot of great seed to soil contact. So we're working with residue management products. There's one from BW Fusion that we're trying called Meltdown. It's just like 40 strains of bacteria that help break residue down. There's another one we're comparing it against from AEA, which is John Kemp's company, Soil Prime. That's like $80 an acre versus $12. So it'll be very interesting to see. BW Fusion, I was actually just down at a training in Ames, Iowa a few weeks ago. Their big belief is in the bacteria. I kind of differ from that. I think the fungi is the magic in the soil that really makes things work. But bacteria is more resilient to tillage. So they're going after a different market than, you know, a no-tiller or a real soil health conscious person, I think. So I've tried a bunch of them. I don't seen very limited success, but I continue to try because I also sell the stuff. So I've got to kind of prove it to myself before I feel comfortable selling.
my agronomist says the same thing he does. We don't use much of that. Sometimes we'll try some new stuff out, but none of it seems to work like nature does.
I'm really interested in, I think AEA's stuff is going to be very beneficial, but it's very spendy. But their program also thinks that they, you know, in 5 to 7 years, you can get completely off of commercial fertilizers too. So
Well,
it's,
I would say you could pay me $80 an acre and I'll put some sheep out there. I'll do the same thing. 'Cause it's not an accident that the same organisms in the rumen are the same ones in the soil.
yep.
And
Exactly.
80% goes through a cow pass through, and 85% pass through rate on sheep. So you've got your manure spreaders there.
Yep.
And if you've got residue, I can
We-
manage it for you.
Well,
We do graze. I didn't bring that up, but we graze our stubbles, you know, not every year, but most years we do.
And I can say, like on the irrigation project up there, integrating livestock onto that farmland is a practice that's been going on since they started it. The problem is they overgraze it.
Yeah.
So then you run into the other compaction and no cover. So
These are great questions, great conversation. Just a few short minutes. What advice do you have for somebody who's starting new with some practices, or even an experienced person? You got best advice.
the best thing is get among like-minded people and start talking that and ask questions and observation and adaptation and be realistic with what your environment's going to allow you to do. At the end of the day, it's got to be a happy family, and so what that takes to make that work, that's what you need to work toward.
My advice is look around at native pasture, see what God put out there. If you're a farmer, kind of try to mimic what he put out there. If it's 80% grassy plants and 20% legumes, try to work that into your rotation. The other thing is, if you're just starting no-till, don't give up on year 3 or 4, because it really starts paying after 5. It seems like 4 to 5 years it takes to really get it going right. And after that, it's like I said, you can start cutting expenses. But the first 5 years are awful tough.
Yeah, I'd say to follow up on that, it took us about 7 years before we really saw the benefits of no-till. And we were very hard conventional tillage before that with my grandpa kind of running the farm. But my biggest advice would be to test. Soil sample, tissue sample throughout the season. Prove to yourself that you're over-fertilizing. And then just start, take little bits away every year. And in 10 years, you'll be down 40%. I think it's a very realistic goal. And maybe some of these biological companies can help shrink that period. That's kind of my hope for them. But I still don't think you're ever going to replicate it with that. But the other thing is just be very observant. I mean, that's the biggest thing you can say. Go out with a shovel, dig up plants, dig up roots, look at the soil structure changes, just be out in your fields more, I think is the biggest thing that I can push to people is understand that's your bank right there. So you better treat that the same way you do the rest of your money. That's kind of the way I look at it. Soil's the most important thing we got. If we don't take care of it, you're going backwards.
Well, thanks a lot, you guys. Why don't we give them a round of applause?